Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Run It Back, episode number 26. I am your host, Menelik Fernandez, and I like to start every show the same way. So I'll give a special shout out to the Rising Coaches Network. It's a great coaching network that has connected me with a lot of other coaches that love to share their game. So I'm always very thankful of that and always like to give them credit where credit is due there. So the premise of this show basically is we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about if we were to play the same game again, what we would do the same, what we would do differently, what we thought worked, what we thought didn't, and talk about the preparation for the game, what goes into it, all that fun stuff. So today we are talking about Penn versus Alabama from their November 5th game, 2019. So we're just a little bit over a year ago now, and we're doing it from Penn's perspective. And we are very, very lucky to, wow, I'm having difficulty speaking this morning. We are very lucky today to have Coach Trey Montgomery from Penn joining us. Trey, I'm going to take a second and try to do you some justice with an introduction here. Trey has been with Penn since 2018. When he joined in 2018, Penn had their first unbeaten Big Five play, including beating Villanova. He's been an assistant previously at Eastern University. He spent 4 years at Destrehan, I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly, high school, and coached the U14 level of the Louisiana Legends. He's played at, as a player, he played at Samford for 4 years. He was a letter winner, a two-time captain, 1,000-point scorer, and started, this stat is remarkable to me, started 88 consecutive games to finish out his career. He's a two-time recipient of the Kevy McGinnis, which is a leadership award and desire to achieve award, and a two-time recipient of the Practice Hard Award, which to me, as somebody who knows you personally, is no surprise. It absolutely points to the kind of character I anticipated that you would have as a player. And as a pro career, you went on to play in the D-League briefly with the Thunderbirds, spent 2 seasons overseas in Germany, and in the ABA for the Jackson Showboats. So Trey, I hope I've done you some justice here. I'm super happy to have you this morning. I really, really appreciate you joining me and happy to do this with you.
And if I could pay you right now, every time that you give me that type of intro, man, that is awesome. And so, no, man, I appreciate being on, man. Thank you so much, man.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So, excuse me. I always like to start sort of with preparation. So take us back. We're going back about a year now. This game was your scout.
Mhm.
It's the first game of the season. For those of you who don't know, Alabama has Kyra Lewis Jr. on their roster, who's a recent draft pick in the NBA. So obviously big time player. Talk about the process. When do you start this scout? How many games are you watching? Like, are you doing 3, 5? What's the typical amount for you? And, because it's the first game of the season, what are you looking at really? Like, how are you comparing it? How are you being an inspector, a detective, so to speak, and finding out information that you need?
Yeah. So, I'll be honest, this was an extremely tricky scout for me, because of so many different factors. To kind of start off, we found out, normally, you're doing scheduling for your next season, later on in that prior season. And so we found out basically about the contract to play Alabama later on in the spring. And I don't know the exact month, but I want to say sometime maybe around March, April, maybe even May. But we found out about it. And so I was super excited. And the reason why was because when I went to Samford, we played against Alabama and they thumped us. And so I really had I was like, yeah, I took this kind of personally. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to play him. I'm ready to play him. And especially knowing what we had coming back and a great player like AJ Broder, we were just so excited. And I remember telling like some alumni who had come to the basketball office and they had just found out. I was like, hey, listen, make sure you schedule that game and go down to Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a good game. So as normal, again, we're figuring out what the scouts are, who the scouts belong to. And basically I don't know if I was like kind of thrown into the volunteer volunteering of getting the first game of the season, but it just
Okay.
kind of happened that way. And so I
Right.
was like, yeah, of course, I'll take Alabama, of course. Little did I know all the tricky things that went into it. So first things first, you got a brand new coach that's coming in. You got so many changes on the roster. On a normal game, what I would do is probably, I talk about the rule of seven, where I try to look at, if this is the middle of the season, I try to look at the team's first two games. I try to look at the team's the most current three games, the last three games, the most recent three games, and then two games in between where they play a team in which does something different, whether or not the team presses or whether or not the team like traps or doubles the post or, maybe plays a matchup zone or switches a lot of defenses, just so I can get a real feel of what the team is. And that just shows me like where they were, what they started out with, where
Right.
they end off at. And then, it also kind of lets me know like how they kind of adjust a little bit and just get a great feel for them. And I love those first games because again, those first couple of games show you the true inclination of what, players tend to do because they're going to draw back to their natural, their natural abilities, especially when things start to break down and you're going to see some of those tendencies, those innate tendencies that they have. And so again, just try to be as thorough as possible. But as far as this game, there was really none of that because new coach coming in, new system. So it's like you can't look back at the last season. So it became number one, a lot of personnel clips. Had to look at a lot of Kyle Lewis, a lot of Galen Smith, a lot of Herbert Jones, a lot of John Petty, a lot of Alex Reese, guys who were there already. And then you turn around and you had transfers, James Beetle Bolden, who was a transfer from West Virginia. Had to watch a lot of personnel clips on him. And then honestly, they had two freshmen that I hadn't really seen in Jalen Forbes and Shackelford, and Jaden Shackelford, and both of them I had to go back and look at EYBL clips and AAU clips and high school clips and just try to see who they were. There, being that Nate Oates was a coach at Buffalo, a very successful coach at Buffalo, I had to watch a lot of Buffalo games, and I was very confused because that style particularly did not translate to what their roster was because they usually started pretty big in the back line with their
Right.
4 and 5. And so I know that their 4, I can't remember his name, Jeremy something, maybe Jeremy Harris, I want to say, from Buffalo. I'm not 100% certain. But number 2, light-skinned kid, about 6'8", can handle it, go both ways. I think he was a lefty, but he was very versatile at the 4 spot. And I know that the 4-man, the current 4-man was Alex Reese, and he was not that. He's more of a pick and pop, big physical shooter. And so all in all, it was just a chance to just kind of really test myself. I had to listen to their scrimmage against Georgia Tech on the radio because it wasn't filmed. And I just had to do a lot of deductive reasoning, but it was
I love
tough.
the deductive reasoning. So, I mean, could you talk about how this, and you've definitely touched on it, how would this compare or contrast to a typical scout where you have the ability to watch your rule of 7? So like you mentioned, there's more personnel clips. You mentioned that you're trying to investigate his style of play, but in terms of what the actual report would look like that you're giving to your guys or that you're giving to your coaches, like, is it going to be thicker? Is it going to be thinner? Is it good? Like, how is it different than what it would typically be because it's the first game, because you're trying to pull things from all over?
I think that as a coach, the one thing that we preach, especially from our guys, is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that from our aspect, we have to be able to reciprocate that when it comes to that, to giving them the same type of information. And so I felt that if I were to try to overload them with a lot of information, especially the first game, then they would go into it thinking, wow, this is a big game, or wow, this is that. And we want the exact opposite. We want
Right.
guys to be comfortable. And so I think that to answer your question, what we really did was just trust ourselves, trust who we are, be who we are. We understand that it's the first game. We're going to make a lot of mistakes. It's not going to be perfect, but it's their first game too. And so the scouting report I wanted to make the scouting report as similar to a normal game as opposed to it being something that, could be different, because you want to kind of treat all scenarios the same as much as possible.
What does delivery look like for you guys? So, I mean, I'm giving a presentation tonight on scouting, and one of the things that I identify that is kind of a key area that needs to be discussed in the creation of reports is like, what does your staff like to do in terms of delivering stuff? Like, do you spend a lot of time on court? Do you, uh, do you present an actual paper copy or a PDF to your guys? Do you spend a lot of time in the film room? What's that process look like? And do your players get all of the information that your coaching staff gets? Like you mentioned, this was your scout. So would you deliver it to your coach and then he'd pick and choose what the guys get? Sorry, it's a bit of a compound question, but like,
No.
what's the whole process look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that you have to be as creative as you possibly can when it comes to giving out information, because everybody learns differently. So you have to be able to present all this information in the wide spectrum, but you also have to try to find a way to keep it as simple and as concentrated as possible. And so I think, every team has, whether it's like we talked about the other day, whether it's acronyms, whether it's certain sayings, whether it's, certain, phrases or certain go-to things, like you hear like, oh, he's a Rondo, or he's a this, or he's a that. We
Right.
don't necessarily do that, but, just try to put it in terms in which that they can relate and in digestible meals. That way they're not trying to consume a whole bunch of information. But to be honest, for us, what we do is that, a couple practices before the game, we really start concentrating on, especially first game of the season. You want to buckle down and do as much as you can about us before you start worrying about anybody else, because you want to learn, all those different things as much as you can, whether it's press or transition defense or silent out of bounds or scenarios, whatever the case may be. And so, we do as much prep as we possibly can as far as, working on us. And then when it's time to work on the other team. So as far as a coach, what I'll do is I'll present personnel clips where we're going over tendencies, what these guys look like, what they favor, how they get the bulk of their points, what's their initiatives, what's their roles typically, which again was hard because going into a new team, new squad, new coach, you kind of don't know what their roles are, but you kind of draw context clues again. So we feed them those personnel clips, and then we show them offensive and defensive clips, but we only do that to like a couple clips. We don't do it in a heavy dosage. The
Right.
reason why is because, especially when you're sitting down in film, you don't want to feed them too much, because stuff is already going in their heads, and their wheels are spinning. And to be honest, like I said before, the average attention span for a human being, especially when it's focused, is about 20 minutes. And so you don't want it to be an hour-long film session, because they're just going to be sitting there like, drowned out. So we give them that. Then we go over things on the court. So the first day we might go over their offense, a couple of plays that they might do. And then, even further, we know that, for example, if we're playing like a team like Villanova, where they love to, back you down, they love to get in the paint, play off two, pivot, try to up fake you. We'll work on certain things as far as like how we want to close out, how we want to get through screens, how we want to communicate these things, and certain things that the team, or certain philosophies that the team might emphasize. We try to do those things in the smaller breakdown drills. Then from there, as far as everybody gets a paper scout. So obviously every coach who does a scout, we have a paper scout that all the coaches, staff, managers, players get. Then we put it on, we have Teamworks, which is I'm sure most teams in the country have Teamworks, which is basically a app or a software that you could kind of put that information on. So they have a copy of that on there. And then beyond that, all of our players have access to Huddle and Synergy. And so if they want specific clips, if they want a copy of that presentation that we have, they have that. Every player on our roster has an iPad, so they have access to it whenever they're on the road or they're in their dorm room or whatever. And so, and then obviously you have your personal stuff to where if they can come in and if you want to do some extra stuff, they can. But just trying to find as many ways as possible of trying to relay that information. So. And then on the court, honestly, you go over as much as you can. Obviously, you have walkthroughs, you have shoot arounds, you have this, you have that. But Again, just trying to give them every possible way because everybody learns different. You might have somebody who could read a paper scout and they're just like, oh, okay, I got it, boom, boom, boom. And you might have another kid who's like, coach, I need you to draw it up. I need you to get on the floor with me. I need to, walk through it.
Coach, there's no way on that paper scout. Like, there's just no chance. I'm sorry. You're mentioning Teamworks. That's the first I'm hearing of it. So what is that app? Sorry. What do you guys do?
Yeah. So Teamworks, I'm doing a little plug. So if Teamworks, if you're out there and you're listening, by the way, you know what I'm saying? Name, image, and likeness does not apply to coaches. So, but I'll be honest with you. It's an app or software where you can get on, and it's a place where your team could centralize. It's a centralized location that could provide as much information as possible for your team. So yeah, it could, if you, as a coach, it's a great tool to where, like, if you want to find out all the information, for instance, like you're on the road, the kid doesn't have his insurance card, he gets hurt, you might have a copy of his insurance card on Teamworks. If you know what I'm saying, if his class schedule could be on Teamworks, that way like what class he's in case you need to go and get him, you need to go check or whatever the case may be, or what classes he's in. You could put it PDF files and all kinds of different things on there. That way it's different pieces of information that they might need to see. Obviously we have our calendar on there, so guys, if there's no reason why you don't know what time practice starts, because it's on Teamwork. So you could get on there and it'll have the day's schedule, so you could see, all right, 11 a.m. meeting, 3 p.m. practice, 7 p.m. dinner, next day it'll have like scrimmage at 11 o'clock, whatever the case may, whatever your schedule looks like. I'm just throwing out random numbers.
Right. That's actually amazing. We just utilize WhatsApp on the teams that I've been on, but that sounds quite a bit better.
So, I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, I think it started from somebody in Durham, and I think they tested it out with Duke's program, if I want to say. And it kind of came out with that.
So going from general to specific about preparation here, what did you identify as, I hate the question that announcers ask, but like keys to the game? What were your specific focuses for Alabama after you've done all your homework and you've put together all of this first game? What are you deciding? These are our areas that we want to focus on for both you and them.
I think going into the game, I think that one thing that we put a heavy emphasis on was getting back on defense. They're a very fast and athletic team, especially in the SEC. One thing about the SEC is that they have no shortage of great athletes.
Right.
Second thing is finishing out possession. So really being able to compete on the glass. We have a saying called compete after the shot. And so, when the ball goes up, we got to be, gang rebound, all five guys got to be there because they have some pretty big physical guys. And really just, over communicate, over talk, and just play and compete as hard as you can. It's the first game and we know we're not going to be perfect. Offensively, we were going into it thinking, listen, let's just take care of the ball. Let's play Penn basketball. Really, really play off of each other, share the rock, keep it hot. Don't try to do too much, play your role, and just let the game come to you. And honestly, if we do those things and just kind of keep it simple, good things tend to happen. I think in a nutshell, that's the way basketball works. We as humans, we make basketball way more complicated than it needs to be. And so usually when you keep it simple, you have good results.
So things like pace of play or how many to the glass or attacking specific matchups or whatever, do those philosophies change game to game at Penn, or are they like, we always only send two to the glass, we always want to play fast against whatever opponent, we always want to take care of the ball in transition or whatever? Or like, are there specific things to those particular philosophies that change game to game, and in this game, did they change specifically for that?
I don't think that they changed drastically. We typically are pretty consistent in what we do. We're not a team that's going to send four to the glass every time, or we're always getting back. Nobody's going. We try to do a good job of making sure that guys understand their role. And so, certain guys know, like, unless I'm under the basket, like my job is usually to get back. Or
Right.
certain guys know, like, hey, listen, if I'm around there, if I can get if I could be aggressive and go after it, then yeah, go after it. But it kind of stays the same, to be honest. There's not too many changes when it comes to that. One thing about the Ivy League is that obviously everybody's overly analytical, and everybody gets back, and nobody really crashes the glass. And because in transition, I think we have, like, probably as far as the league, we probably have the lowest transition rates because everybody gets back.
Interesting.
If I'm not mistaken, it's really hard to run on Ivy League squads, just because everybody gets back and sets their defense. And so, but I don't think too many things changed, from this game as far as, like, tactical approaches. I think it was just more about enhancing the things that we do better. There may have been a couple of little wrinkles that we might have added, or this, that, and the third, but usually we're pretty consistent in what we do.
And then I like tailing on to that, screen coverages. Would you say that you're more of a team that's like, hey, we're always going to play this coverage? Or are you kind of, jack of all trades, master of none, so to speak, where
Yeah, we actually, I'll say this, last year we actually, tried to, um we actually, as far as coaches, we met a lot about, just possibly changing things up, as far as, like, the different coverages and ball screens and what we were trying to do more. But as you probably see, as far as, our big AJ and our other big Jared Simmons, they're usually really good in the ball screen, as far as, like, when they're in, quote unquote drop coverage. I think the adjustments that are usually made, is whether how high or low we want them to be, or if they are a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more passive, things like that. But we're usually pretty similar. Like, we don't hard hedge.
right,
We're not blitzing the ball screen.
right.
We've talked about maybe downing or icing, whatever you want to call it. We talked about that, but as far as last year, especially with the personnel that we had, it was just best for us to just kind of do what we do. And if we have to make an adjustment to where it's like, hey, listen, like, this guy, he's very proficient at dribble pull-ups, especially from three, then we might tell our big, maybe you want to step up a little bit higher, especially if he's not a great passer. Might want to step up a little bit higher because he might not hit that role. You know what I'm saying? And just be there and just kind of show a little bit of pseudo help, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
to where that guy could have a little extra time to get back in front of his man. And so those type of adjustments are definitely made. But as far as, like, changing it up, or, like, changing the in the landscape of how we guard it, it usually doesn't happen.
So commenting a little bit, just trail end on the preparation and incorporating it with adjustments, looking back in hindsight, at which they always say is 2020, is
Mm-hmm.
there anything in your preparation that you feel you missed or would change or would do differently, knowing the results of the game, knowing the way the game was played? And then, that being said, are there any adjustments that stuck out either by you or by them, first half, entire game, whatever it might be, that like, maybe I should have thrown an audible in the preparation there because they made this adjustment. So maybe we could have been a little bit more prepared. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind there?
Not too much. I'll be real. Again, if I'm looking back hindsight and wanting to do some other things differently, there were a lot of careless things that we did, as far as, like, not taking care of the ball. There were
Right.
some, I wish we were a little bit better transition defense, especially in that first half. There was a play where our point guard scored a basket, but he kind of jogged back and they got a wide open three in the corner. There was a play in the first half where I don't want to say his name, but he just kind of I don't out people, but one of our players, he kind of left the ball,
Right.
and Kyra Lewis got a wide open three. So, like, transition defense, I wish was a little bit better. But honestly, I think every team in the country they're like their first game. They're like, we got to get better at getting back on defense and transition, and they're just running all over us. We got to get better at turnovers, like not turning the ball over.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
but I don't think there are any wrinkles. I think it's all part of the process, to be honest. And I think, it's hard to look back at a win and just be like, all right, well, listen, we should have did stuff different because we won.
Yeah.
But, especially as that first game, it's like, you can't really, you don't want a perfect product because at the end of the day, you want to be playing your best basketball at a certain point. If you're playing perfectly in the beginning of the season, there's only one way to go
Yeah,
from
that's
that
true.
point.
Very
So,
true. That's a
um,
great point, Trey. And to your point, I mean, like Kyra Lewis, who ended up getting drafted, like we were talking about, had 5 turnovers in this game, right? And they had 19 as a team overall. So I mean, you guys were obviously doing good things, but just like you said, you don't want perfect product to start. So like there's going to be errors that exist in there. Let's talk halftime. Yeah, you're tied. You're going into the half. What are you looking at on the box? What's important to you? And what adjustments do you make based upon the box, and how are you talking to your guys? Is it motivational? Is it X's and O's? Is it a combination? What's going on there?
I think going into it, first of all, I think we were extremely happy. And the reason why was because, high major teams, and I don't want to put them all in a nutshell, but usually when they play mid-major, low major teams, they want to be assassins. They want clean kills. They want to
Right.
go in and they want to knock you out by 30, get their walk-ons in, get the crowd into it, let the walk-on hit a half-court shot, lucky shot or something like that, and go crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we're tied, and we had also, if I don't know if you remember watching that first half, but the first half was kind of ugly. There were a lot of like loose balls and like a lot of
Yeah.
hits and deflections and a lot of there was a span where we didn't really score either team for like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes maybe. So it's like that's what we wanted. We wanted to muck it up,
Right.
make it as difficult as possible. Don't let the crowd really get into it. And it was a low it was a low scoring half, I guess you could say, early 30s. So it's like
Yeah.
teams weren't really scoring. There was a lot of free throws. And so it was like the game was at our pace. And so we were extremely excited. We were just like, hey, listen, like there were 7 threes that happened. And if I'm not mistaken, all 7 threes, I wrote them down too. And I could tell them to you, all 7 threes were kind of stuff that we don't do. Like, Jaden Shackel for his 2 threes. We had one guy who jogged back, and it was a step back in which we quit on the play.
Right.
He just stepped back and he just watched him shoot. We don't do that. John Beetle Bolden, his threes, it was a extremely bad closeout where we didn't have our hands up, and he just shot it right in our face with no contest. And then the other one was a bad closeout, and then the other ones were bad communication. Lewis hit 2 of them. I think he had one in transition that we kind of left the ball. There was an overhelp, drive, overhelp, and then they one moored it. Stuff like that is easy. It's stuff that you could correct. And so we're going in saying like, hey man, listen, they hit 7 threes, but at the end of the day, it was all incumbent upon the things that we didn't do, and that's fine.
Right.
But they're all adjustable things. So like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. I think they finished the game with maybe like 18 offensive rebounds or something like that. Hey, let's clean up on the boards. You know what I'm saying? Let's really finish out these possessions. We're working hard to get to make them shoot tough, difficult shots. They played very poorly at the rim. Let's go ahead and clean it up. Let's not give them second chances. It's going to make our job a little bit easier. And so, but on the offensive end, we're doing a great job. Just take care of the ball, keep playing hard, and trust in each other. We have a saying called "must trust," and
Must trust. I like it.
we have shirts that actually say that. And so, just trusting each other. And I think that was what we were basically saying: trusting in what we do and who we are, be who you are, and go out there and just compete to the fullest. And I think it echoed the same thing that we said in the beginning in the game, and it was an extremely good feeling going into halftime tied.
Like that. Do you would the majority of those be comments just like that? Like, hey, they hit 7 threes, let's clean it up? or are there oftentimes like actionable items? And then are you drawing up the first play at halftime for the first play after? Like, hey, we're gonna go to, if I'm not mistaken in this one, I actually think I have a clip of it here. I think your first set coming out is a pistol set that you end up getting a three in the corner. And, to the point that you're making, they shot 4 of 21 from three in the second half after going 7 of 17. So they go from 41.8% to 19%. So obviously, whatever you're saying worked, but I'm just wondering if there's strategy, or if there's a lot of the time it's just like, hey guys, remember, like, you didn't close out on that, or blah blah blah. Those were just mental lapses. If you fix it, you're fine.
Yeah. So for one, honestly, first things first, and most college programs do this. And when you're going at halftime, you're meeting as coaches.
Yeah.
For the first minute and a half, 2 minutes, when we get in there, we're literally chalking up ideas, doing this, doing that. What's this? What's that? Coach has the box score. He's kind of saying like what he sees, and then we're telling him what we see, and we kind of convey on that point. Then, and that honestly, that gives them time. And this is where your team, like one of the best quotes I hear about the greatest teams, is that great teams police themselves. And so this is the opportunity for your leadership in those upperclassmen, or if it's underclassmen, it's fine. But those guys who are leaders to really shine. And in that other room, in that locker room, they're in there communicating on what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so they're the ones that are being harder on them than we are. We come in and we're just like, we're not yellers, we're not fussers, we're not, cursing people out or saying this, that, and the third. We're just talking about our standards and, what we do and the things that we value. And we're going over certain things and, saying like, hey, listen, like, we don't jog back on defense. We sprint back on defense. Hey, listen, right. We don't quit on plays, like compete. Even if you're late, compete. Just things like that. As far as the next play, that's all Coach Downey, to be honest.
Right.
We give suggestions, but at the end of the day, and he doesn't draw up the first play until the huddle, till we get outside. Until we get out on the court. So it's not anything like, hey, listen, like, it's not a script, or, at Sanford, we would script. So the first 3 plays out of the half, we would know. We would run and we would just go, all right, boom, 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 boom. But he, what Coach Donahue does, what I think is great, he just kind of feels, he feels things out. And, the one thing I do love about him is that he does not make rash decisions. And so he'll kind of see it, play it out, see how things go. And then from there, he'll put his stamp on it. And so all in all, I mean, coming out of the half, there was nothing specific that we were really talking about running.
Right.
It was just like, because by that time too, we only knew about 20 to 30% of the sets or quick hitters or whatever you want to call it that we run. We only knew a select amount. And so it's not like we have an entire arsenal of stuff to really go to. So it was just very quick, and one thing, you see about us is that we don't necessarily run sets. It's usually quick hitters into our foundation, into
right.
5-out stuff. And so, or actions that we run off the post or things like that. And so it was just like, hey, listen, let's get it moving. Let's get it hot. Let's get them moving, really reacting off stuff, and let's just play off of it. Let's really make our cuts a little bit harder. Let's really play off of one another. If you don't have anything, get it to AJ and let's play off of him, stuff like that. So if you got it, get into a ball screen, whatever, but just playing into what our strengths are.
Love it. Going back to something you just said, you get a real sense as a coach of who your guys are in those 2 minutes when you're outside talking with other coaches and you can hear that discussion going on in the locker room, right? Like,
absolutely.
When you can sometimes, I mean, I've been part of good and bad environments on a coaching staff, and you can sometimes hear people yelling and screaming at each other or saying bad things to each other, and you're like, man, this is going to be a tough one to get like better with. And then sometimes you can hear, 1 or 2, like you said, of your senior players taking leadership, holding people accountable, including themselves, and you're like, I think we're gonna be all right. Like, we're gonna be good here. So I like it. I think it's a really good metric of understanding where you are. And then, like, going in, the sense in the room gives you a pretty good idea of where you're headed for that second half.
No
That
doubt.
being said, if there's anybody who has any questions, jump in, please. But if not, I'm going to share and I'm going to pull up some video of the game. And Trey, just sort of like what we talked about, let me know what you see. Let me know the inner workings of what you guys are thinking from this kind of stuff. I've just kind of split them up into some plays that I like, some attacking actions, some defending actions, and a couple of the things that happened at the end of the game here. Obviously, this was a close one, a nail biter towards the end of the game. So there's a couple that are in there, but we start, I think, just with a baseline out of bounds, just a play that I like, and I'm wondering, does it make your scout? How do you think the guys played it? What would you do differently? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, we did a good job as far as the initial coverage. We were lined up the right way. I think that Jordan, if you look, Jordan, who's guarding Shackelford at the top of the key, and Eddie Scott, they do a great job of what we call whiting or switching. The guy he came off flying and Jordan got caught up, and so Eddie whited it. I think, we could have probably done a little bit better job as far as Eddie not getting hit by that screen. I
Right.
think if AJ probably communicated it maybe a little bit earlier, or Eddie's a big guy, he's 6'6", so but he moves pretty well. I think if we don't get hit by the screen, it's a lot better. But overall, the one thing that I do love about this is the fact that, again, you compete through the play. Like, regardless of if you're late, that stuff's gonna happen. You're
Right.
gonna get hit by a screen sometimes. Teams' offense is at an all-time high right now in basketball at all levels, and so you're going to get hit by a screen. You're going to get caught off guard. You're going to get hit with a misdirection or something like that. But at the end of the day, the best teams compete to the end of the play. And
For
so
sure.
I really love this idea. And then right here, Ryan Bentley, who is a very underrated rebounder, number 00 in the middle of the paint, he goes and cleans things up. And so he's playing at Cal right now, and he's playing fairly well. So as a grad transfer. So I think overall we did a good job. And those moments right there are great moments. And what people don't understand is it's 16 minutes or 17 minutes in the game, 3 minutes in, and they're up 11-5. And that shot goes in probably if, Shackelford doesn't feel rushed. If he feels like he has time, he might put on a better delivery.
Right.
If Ryan Bentley lollygags in the paint and just watches it instead of going after it, they get an offensive rebound. That 13-5 and gets them on a run, like it could be easily a different ball game with a team with a kid like like we said, Kyra Lewis, who was a lottery pick, and some of these other proficient scorers. So being as locked in at all times, even in those moments, we're down 6 and everybody's like, oh, this is really doesn't matter. No, it matters. Like, everything matters, especially in a game where you win by 1, everything matters. And so I really enjoy just the fact that we competed through the possession in this.
Part of the reason I keep going back and forth with it is I actually really like this contest because, like you said, he gets hammered on this screen. He could have done a better job of getting under it, or whatever the case might be. But he doesn't give up, right? Like he's pretty much there on the release. He's hands up, closes out to it, changes the shot, makes him a little bit uncomfortable, and he ends up with a front rim and a good closeout, like you said.
Yeah, I love Eddie Scott. I think he's gonna be a grad transfer this year. So whoever gets him is gonna have a kid who plays his butt off. He's so versatile and long and athletic, and he's a DC kid, so he's suited for a game like this because playing in that league up there, they're not bothered by fans and tough games and stuff like that.
Right.
So he was ready for this, and so that contest just shows how locked in he was.
Another one that I liked, this was just an Iverson cut, so a loop series where they end up with a cross screen on underneath and they get a really good look at it. You don't really see the end of the play due to poor editing. But, wondering, does it make your scout? How would you play it differently if you get the chance? And, just what your thoughts are on the play overall.
Yeah, so I think they got caught with a moving screen. James Beetle Bolden got a foul on that play. On the Iverson cut, first things first, I think Bryce he could have done a better job. Who's guarding John Petty, who threw the pass? I think he could have done a better job of trailing. Number one, he's a shooter.
Right.
Going into that game, John Petty, all he does is shoot threes, and so you got to trail him and force him to put the ball on the floor and close out really, really aggressively on him, because the moment that he puts the ball on the floor and kind of attacks the rim, he becomes more inefficient, I guess you could say. But if you let him feel comfortable on the perimeter, he gets better. But fighting over the top of this would have been a whole lot better, and not fighting underneath and going through all that traffic would have
Right.
also allowed him to really get close and really be able to discourage that pass if he had some active hands with it as well.
Right.
And then also, another thing, Jordan Dingle, who was guarding James Beetle Bolden, who put that screen on AJ and got, I think it's Javion Davis for the layup. I think he should have done a better job of communicating. I think he's too busy just fighting and watching the ball. As you can see, he's kind of lost looking at his man and not really communicating. What he
Right.
could have honestly done is that James Beetle Bolden is I don't want to say a terrible finisher, but he's not elite at finishing. And the chances of John Petty, who is not a great assist guy, passing it in a direct line through Ryan Betley, through Alex Reese, through Bryce Washington, through AJ Broder, all the way to James Beetle Bolden, through Jordan Dingle, is very slim. So he could have almost sat almost in the middle of the paint a little bit lower and kind of
Right.
helped him out for a half a second and discouraged that. And so just being connected, being on a string, being able to help one another out for that half second, it's the same. That right there is essentially a ball screen. It's drop coverage on the ball screen, right? You're sitting there, you're playing both a little bit, and then you're waiting for the guy to get through. And so, at the same token, our bigs do it for our guards. We need our guards to do it for our bigs in that aspect. So I think he could have done a better job. But again, this is Jordan Dingle's first game. He also
Right.
had 24 and 7, so, and he hit the game winner. So at the end of the day, I can't blame him for his mistakes, especially on the road in an SEC game as your first collegiate game. That stuff's going to happen. And so just stuff that we got to communicate better and understand how to help each other out.
It's a nice set by them. I like it. And would you think, I mean, obviously you had a great game. Would this be something that would still make film that you would talk to Dingle about afterwards? Just like, hey, maybe think about playing it this way, etc. Would it also make film for who went under here?
Bryce.
One is
21.
Bryce. Right. So under, would you say, hey, we probably want you going over, lock and trail?
Well, one thing that we do is that, I love giving film out to everybody. And, one thing as coaches, we always say is that when I talk to one person, I'm talking to everybody. Right. And so, because coaches, the number one thing they hate is repeating themselves.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, this is not something that I would just show Jordan or just show Bryce. I'm showing it to everybody.
Right.
Because this is something that after the game or the next day or, whenever we have practice or film sessions or whatever, we're going over with everybody and we're saying like, hey, listen, in this instance, put yourself in these shoes. And we always say, I'm not singling out Jordan. I'm singling out everybody because you're going to be in this spot at some point. And so we got to do a better job of it. Just so happens to be Jordan right now. So we got to do a better job of doing this. Same thing with Bryce. We've had a number of kids do that over the course of the year. It's not just him, but if we just show that to Bryce, Lucas Monroe might do it, or Jonah Charles might do it, or Devin Goodman might do it, or Ryan Betley might do it. So it's like, I think showing these clips to everybody and singling out the message to one person is not necessarily as beneficial. I think just showing everybody and just being able to say, hey, this is something that we need to do better.
I think to your point, I think that establishes your benchmark coverages too, right? Like, so, I mean, an Iverson cut is not something that's going to be unique to one team. You're going to see the loop series a few times throughout the season, right? So you're going to know, hey, we probably want to lock and trail over on this type of cut. And, if they're adding a rip screen to it from the guy who's coming under or whatever, we probably want to play it this way typically. And we want to make sure we're pressuring the ball so that pass isn't easy, but we also want to make sure that, we're playing it essentially, like you said, like a ball screen on this one, where we're in this kind of coverage type deal. Helps you establish a benchmark so that if you're sharing it with your entire team, everybody gets the sense like, oh, okay, like every time we see loop series, Iverson cut, whatever you want to call it, this is how we're going to play it.
Yep. No doubt.
This is one of your actions. I liked it. It's just a simple double drag. Teaching points. What do you see? How could it be better? And then, without being married to the result, how do you feel about the exit cuts and what ends up happening with his shot selection at the end?
Yeah, I definitely thought that, especially with AJ, I thought he was pressing a little bit, especially in the first half. And so I'll speak about the end result first. I definitely think we one thing that we always talk about, and I'm not going to use all of our terminology, but the best players, and especially at the next level, and I talked about this before on different forums, the best players are the ones that make the best decisions. And
Right.
when you get in the paint, the sweet spot, that's your opportunity to really put a stamp on that decision making. And so whenever you get to right at about that SEC, when you make that drive, it's incumbent upon you to start thinking about what's the best decision here. The best decision right now is a kick out to Jordan Dingle. Especially with 15 on the clock, instead of trying to go up to AJ's weak hand and try to throw up a hard layup on Alex Reese, who's 6'9", 240, 250, and Jalen Forbes, who's a 6'5" athletic guard from, down south. I think he's from either out Mississippi, I want to believe. That's a hard thing to do on the road as well. And so you got, Jordan Dingle, who is a very, very good, proficient three-point shooter who has his hands wide open. Jaden Shackelford's in no man's land. He's not guarding anybody. He's not helping the drive, nor is he guarding his man. And then also you have a drop off to Bryce Washington right there.
Right.
And whatever he does with it, whether he shoots it or kicks it out, it's a better possession as opposed to throwing this up and hoping for a foul. And I think sometimes we got in the mode where we were trying to draw a foul instead of trying to execute.
Right.
There's a big difference in that. And I'll go back to initial action. I think just the double drag, that play, I think it's something that's really simple. A lot of teams run it. And the play was to get Ryan to come off of it. I think Devin was, sometimes he could be overly aggressive, number 12, our guard. And so, but at the end of the day, it was the right read because they just kind of played off of it and switched off of it, which was fine. But at the end of the day, I think the play was supposed to go to Ryan Bentley, number 00, but, they guarded it well. And, at the end of the day, that's what teams are going to do. I think we had run that play maybe twice before. And so it was just kind of something that, we found some success in, and their coverage wasn't great in it. And so we tried to attack it right before the half, but, they did a good job staying with it. And so, but that's what's going to happen. I just think that, being able to show more poise, especially at the end of the clock, would have done us a little bit of a better job right there. But hindsight, again, 2020.
For sure.
One thing also that we also say is that you can't stifle creativity. So the moment you start telling a kid that he can't do something, you've just closed the window. And you're not letting, that fresh air get through. And so at the end of the day, I don't blame Devin. I don't blame him for this. I don't blame AJ. They're being aggressive. At the end of the day, there's a better play, but I'm not going to stop them from being aggressive, especially they're two seniors. We need for them to be aggressive. And so all in all, I mean, at the end of the day, could the execution have been a little bit better? Yeah, but you live with it,
So I got a couple questions for you about exit cuts on here. So you got Devin turning the corner. In my opinion, I think he's got an advantage here. Some could argue that that John Petty Jr. is still on his hip, but I think he's got the advantage. They stunt off of ball side, so he kicks it out. When he kicks it out, you got Jalen sort of sending him baseline. Where would you prefer? So he exits ball side in behind, right? Devin does there. I'm just wondering, do you teach in terms of penetration principles to fill in behind, or should he be going opposite? What's ideal for you? And then when your big makes this, we cut from ball side right across, which almost sort of puts number 12 on his drive line, Forbes back on the drive line of your big. So I'm just sort of wondering on the cuts on your penetration principles, like what would you teach? What would be ideal for you? And how would you approach it film wise with them?
Honestly, in the beginning, I thought Devin's cut was fine. So one thing that we say is that when you drive and kick, or you pass the ball, you cut, you find a corner. Doesn't matter which side, you find a corner.
Right.
So in this aspect, I don't think Devin, honestly, what I think is happening is this: Bryce Washington is not the greatest of ball handlers. He's quick, he's athletic, but his ball handling is not as proficient, especially at the end of the clock. And he's also not one of our primetime playmakers, I guess you could say. And
Right.
so when that ball gets kicked to him on that wing, I think what Devin's thinking is that he's not going to drive baseline because that's not typically what he does.
Right.
And then also, when he sees him drive baseline, I know what Devin's thinking right here. Let me go back and get the ball. So, but he made a fine play. He gave it back to AJ at the top, who is usually what we start running 5-out stuff, and we start making cuts.
Right.
And then from there, again, it's our principles. We say when you pass and you pass, you find a corner. Pass, cut, find a corner. And so I don't think that Bryce was thinking like, oh, maybe I should stay, because ideally I think he should have stayed in that particular corner.
Right.
But and left it to be a completely naked side. And to also be honest, if he doesn't cut, AJ's got a wide open layup.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because again, Shackelford's not guarding anybody.
Right.
But or if he does help, because maybe he sees Forbes coming out of nowhere. But if he does help, he definitely sees that kick because the play's in front of him as opposed to behind him. So I mean, I would have loved to see Bryce stay in that corner, but he's doing what we ask him to do. At the end of the day, we tell those guys to do certain things, and
Right.
so we can't necessarily get mad when it doesn't necessarily work in our favor.
First play, second half, if I'm not mistaken, the pistol set I was referring to before. Love it. What do you see? And was the slip by design in there? Was there anything you saw in the first half? I mean, love the set, but the slip in there right at this point, is it a read, or were you specifically talking about it at the half? Like, hey, we think we got it.
So one thing going into the scout was that, through ball screens, they love to hard hedge.
Right.
They kind of changed it up a little bit against us, but Galen Smith is not the most fleet-footed big. He's not the most active big. And so by
Does look
AJ slipping,
big, though. He looks like a big. He does look like a big man, though.
He's a load, man. He is very powerful. I've seen him, especially on film, move some pretty big dudes. And so, but because of that, driving, we call it driving the slip. But
Right.
When you drive that slip, especially, those guards think that they're either going to get hit, that they're going to go under, or that, they're going to have to fight over, or their big's going to be there to help. And so what usually happens is we teach the timing of the fact that we want you to attack when that guy looks. When that guy looks to see where that screen is, to kind of feel out, that's when you attack. And Jordan did a great job of timing it right. And as you can see, as it goes a little bit, Kyra Lewis opens up because he's looking.
Yeah.
Jordan Dingle is elite at getting downhill and making decisions. Very powerful upper body, very athletic. He's a very underwhelming athlete. Like, he could jump with the best of them, but he's also a very good passer. And I think the off action was just, honestly, it was just an exchange. So we teach on the backside, like, hey, listen, don't stand there and let the defense be able to get planted. Exchange, cut, do something, but don't just stand there. And I think because of that, it forces the defense to really make a decision. Either I'm going to help or I'm going to stay. So either Alex Reese was going to help, or Jordan Dingle's finishing with his right hand. And so gave it up to Eddie, who, again, I love this position. Him stand still three. He hit one to start the game. He hit one at the start of the half. He did a great job and took his time, knocked it down. Our guys knew it was going in before it left his hands.
Well, I think that whole play is made by that slip, though. Just like,
Oh, no
like
doubt.
you
No
said,
doubt.
Kyra opens up, and then just keep the advantage from there, right? Like they're forced into help, knock it down. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. It was a great execution coming out there. And again, those moments right there, like I think this is a statistic. If I'm not, I don't want to say the wrong number, but there's a statistic that says like, those first 3 to 4 minutes out of the second half determines a lot of games. And so coming out and, even if that shot doesn't go in, getting a quality play, that just shows the level of focus and where we are and, how connected we are as a unit of going out there and saying, hey, listen, we're here to fight. And that gives a message to the other team. It's like, oh, snap, they got a wide open three to start the half. Like, what the hell are we doing? And that sends a message to that other bench, like, yo, like these kids are playing. And
For
so
sure.
glad it went in. But if it didn't go in, like it's a great shot. It's the shot that every college coach wants. You want to stand still three,
Yeah.
Especially by a person that can make it.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. This, I think, I just put it up because they went to a shock and under, which I thought was unique. I mean, he blows the finish, he gets the call for hanging or whatever, not being married to the result. Again, I'm just kind of wondering if the slip out early, the roll and Barry, like if you guys knew that they were going to switch coverages in here, or if this is again still just reading the situation and Broder being good. Obviously it doesn't end up with the result that you want, but I'll take this kind of shot every single time.
100%. 100%. No, AJ was elite at the reading. One thing that we always tell the guys too is that, mix it up. Like, don't let's see how they guard it, mix it up. I think, and to be honest, that wasn't necessarily a slip. He just didn't hit anybody. But I also realized as the game kind of went on that Galen Smith, Kyra Lewis connection wasn't going great. There was also a play, if I'm not mistaken, where AJ has the ball, and we call it a Jackson. But it was an inverted ball screen where a guard screened for the big. The big had the ball, and the guard set a ball screen. And they just didn't know how to help and how to communicate. And all through the night, they were struggling at going through. And so I think just trying to put those guys in as many different coverages as possible really helped. But AJ, that was all AJ, to be honest. Really just getting into something and saying, hey, listen, like, let's go after him and let's play. And so honestly, the play kind of went a little bit further. I want to say that was a different play. I don't want to say the name, but that was a different play. Because once you go over the ball screen, there's another action that goes into it. But at the end of the day, he helped, and we just made the right decision out of it. And that's what we teach. We teach great decisions. So
Princeton type concept. I think this was just like a point down the middle type play.
Yeah.
How often do you get it? And I mean, how often are you practicing it type deal where they're looking for that first read? I mean, this is just easy. I'll take this all day long, please and thank you. I mean,
yeah, to be honest, the NBA, the little ring around, we call it a candy cane. That's a read. And if we say, like, listen, like, we ran it a couple times in the first half. Jordan Dingle got a dunk off of it in the first half.
right.
Like, first off, like poor adjustment by them. Like he should have shot the gap 100%, like or went under. Like where AJ caught it, he caught it 30 feet away from the basket. Jordan Dingle's not pulling that.
Right.
So you fighting over the top is kind of crazy to me. But at the same token, it's all a read. And honestly, it's just playing off of him. And so, I think that, we teach those different things, of those different cuts, those different, run at actions, rub actions. If you're a Princeton guy, rubs or or points or whatever you want to call it. But that was just a simple read because John Petty followed him.
I'll skip ahead to some of the defensive stuff. Are you good on time, sir?
And I'm here. I'm here all day. So
Awesome. Appreciate you. So this, I believe, there's a lot of stuff before, and then we end up with just a blow by, and I'm just kind of wondering where you should be helping from, how you would clean it up in future. What sort of happens for you guys here?
yeah. So one thing we always say is, Eddie Scott it's a hard position for him to be in. Kyra Lewis, first off, let's be real.
Yeah,
Special.
I made the NBA. Like,
he's a lottery pick. He's not just an NBA. He's a lottery pick. He's special. Like, for him to be so young, he is so athletic, good finisher, and he really kind of went bonkers in the second half against us. And Devin Goodman, I'll say this about Devin Goodman. Devin Goodman is a very good on-ball defender for guards. He may be small, but he is extremely laterally quick. And I think he just got caught off guard looking at the screen. And it's a hard spot to be in, to be honest. And I think Eddie Scott does the right thing. It's you're in help as much as you possibly can, but James Beetle Bolden is a 37, 38% three-point shooter. He already hit 2 threes in that game. Like, do we give up a three or do we try to force him to the basket? I think, maybe we could have maybe been in a better position, whether it be AJ or Ryan, and really try to discourage him. But at the end of the day, I just don't like fouling at the end of the play. I don't know how much of a foul this really was. But at the end of the day, it's a special play that, Devin, I think Devin's got to do a better job of keeping him in front. And also, if he sees that screen, forcing him to the screen as opposed to letting him refuse it. But all in all, it's a special play made by an NBA player, which is going to happen. And, all in all, we just got to do a better job of moving our feet, staying in front. I think also he might have been able to kind of give him an inch and give him a little bit of space. But, it's going to happen.
I mean, obviously don't comment if you feel that it's proprietary, but do you always help from your 5? Because where AJ is coming from, to me, would not be where my standardized help. Like, I wouldn't characterize him as the whole man or the MIG at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And, I agree. That's not much of a foul. It almost looks like the ref was blowing the whistle before anything happened there. But I would probably have come from 0-0 here. So I'm just curious.
Absolutely. No doubt. I think Ryan could have done a better job. He's kind of he's not guarding his man, nor is he guarding the ball. So he's not really doing anything. I think that he could have came up and kind of walled up and, or been there early and discouraged that. Kyra Lewis is going downhill really, really fast. So it's going to be tough for him to really make a solid quality pass.
Right.
And maybe he throws something that's crazy and creates a turnover. I don't know. But I think he could have definitely done more. I think the other thing too is that one thing that we teach, especially in the beginning, is really being in that help and showing it early. So if Eddie Scott in the beginning, when Kyra Lewis has the ball, if he could have been more in that gap space and really utilizing his length and being wide, maybe he could have discouraged it a little more. If Ryan Bentley sits and he turns around instead of just trailing his man with his back to the ball, if he opens up and Kyra Lewis sees him a half second early, maybe that discourages him to maybe just want to drive and kick. I don't know, but I definitely agree in the sense that, Ryan number 00 could have probably done a little bit more, but we don't help on the same side ball. So there's nothing that Eddie could have done, and AJ tried to make a play. But honestly, the reason why AJ got a foul call is because he works the refs. He plays really, really hard, and he barks a lot. He does it respectfully. He doesn't like curse out refs or do anything or fuss at refs, but he's always talking. He's always saying stuff like, he's like, oh, that's not a foul, and stuff like that. And so him getting a cheap one every now and then, we know why it happens. Is because of the way he plays. But he's a competitor. He's one of those I'll trip my mom in the sack race type of guys. You know what I'm saying? So
I understand the mentality 100%.
He wants to win. Yep.
We got one more. This one I'm gonna watch. I think this was another one of help principles where you're helping from type deal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of twist back and forth, and then this tied into the question of always only helping from the 5. Kyra ends up with a layup here. I probably wouldn't so you're playing the ball screen action, the handoff action, with just 2. I probably would help from the other side personally. I'm just wondering, do you again always help from the 5, and what do you think of the set overall?
So this play has a lot of factors. Number one, I think Devin does a great job chasing him off.
Right.
Now, flips the screen. It's hard to chase him again. Usually you're probably going to shoot the gap, but there's no space to shoot the gap.
Right.
Alex Reese does a great job right here of being in that right spot. Now, we go over this countless amounts of times. When in doubt, white, switch. This is a dead switch. This is a dead switch. Jared's got a beat on him. He's got the right spot. So this should have been a switch. Issue is not making an excuse. Jared caught a cramp the play before.
Okay.
So the play before this, if I'm not mistaken, was a layup by Jared Simmons. Jordan Dingle catches it in the corner. He pump fakes, drives baseline, drops it off to Jared Simmons. Jared Simmons goes up for a layup, and then he cramps up running down the court after only being in for like 10 seconds, which I was super pissed about because we needed AJ to get a break.
Right.
So as you can see, he's looking down at his leg. And if you let the play keep going, you see him you see how he's moving. He winces a little bit. Yeah. So he cramps up. And the play after that, we took him out. So I remember this play like yesterday because I was sitting there keep playing. I was yelling my balls off. But
you can actually see him right in that lateral movement right there. You can see that it's not what it should be.
He's definitely cramping. And so I'm yelling to coach yo, get him out. But he's like, no, AJ needs a break. And so, but that's kind of what happened. Now, Jared is way better than that, and I don't want to play for an excuse. It's no excuse. That stuff happens. People turn their ankles and all this other stuff. You got to play through it. But at the end of the day, that should have been a dead white. That should have been a dead switch. And that's where our help was. And if we got a mismatch, we got to compete. It is what it is. So if we got 5'11", on a good day, Devin Goodman guarding 6'9" Alex Reese, then that's what we got to, D3's got to do it. So we got to do it. Right. So at the end of the day, that's supposed to be a switch, not necessarily any type of help on the bottom side.
I'm going to skip ahead to the end of game stuff. Last 2 plays, basically before the free throws. So just to paint the picture for people, Penn is down by 1, and it's side out for them. Let's take a look. I'm just kind of wondering if, the game, so this is an ATO too, just for everybody else. There's a timeout that's happened here. So you've had the opportunity to draw something up, and he slips out, he attacks and makes an incredible shot. What were the goals here when you were talking to your guys, when you were drawing this up? Was it just basically get them the ball and let them play?
Yeah, it's the Jordan, break it up. Everybody get the hell out the way, right? No,
well, he has the right name, right? So
exactly, right. So to be honest, it was a play to get Jordan the ball, and we were gonna run a play to kind of get AJ and Ryan Bentley into some action and kind of let Jordan play off of that, because Jordan had been our scorer, our go-to guy, and try to create some outlets for him and AJ and Ryan, our best shooter, so that he could have his kickouts and make a decision, whatever. The problem was that they put James Beetle Bolden on him, who is a pretty damn good defender. If you play for Bob Huggins, you better be a good defender in order to get on the floor. And so he pressures him, and freshman mistake, Jordan just kind of runs thinking that the dude's just going to let him catch it.
Right.
and doesn't realize like this is college basketball. This is not EYBL. And so at the end of the day, Bolden does a great job. Now, ball goes into Ryan's hands, and we're still trying to get it to Jordan. And it just got into that mode where, Jordan was being aggressive. And at the end of the day, once again, if we're going to live with our seniors being aggressive, we got to live with our freshmen being aggressive. We got to live with whoever's on the floor being aggressive. That's just being consistent. And so he had carried us, him and AJ had carried us that entire night. Like, he went downhill and we trusted him. There's a reason why he's in the game. And he goes down and he makes a hell of a play. And I watched this play over and over because I try to pick out a different reaction in the crowd every time. My dad is in the red hat behind our bench. One of my best friends from college, Josh Bedwell, who's from Alabama, he's in behind our bench. My entire wife's family is behind our bench, and so it was a great moment. It was a tough game and a tough finish, but at the end of the day, that's something that he's capable of doing.
Right.
Well,
obviously, yeah.
and he's a strong, competitive kid, and he was raised really, really tough as far as his dad being a coach, and his dad played for Cal, for UMass, and so he was brought up, and he's a New York kid, so it's like, the moment wasn't too big. He was just kind of ready for it, and
right.
Ultimately it was just like, hey, listen, play through each other, and he made a great play.
So my next question is, in your huddle before you came out for this sideline out of bounds, were you anticipating, no timeout by them? They're going to play fast on our make. Like, have you given them instructions for the defensive end as well? Or have you only, let's focus on the offensive play and see what happens afterwards?
I think we kind of know, like, listen, we're down one, so if we miss this, foul. We also told if you see Eddie from the corner, Eddie cuts, and that's one thing that he's great at doing, is cutting. He got a key offensive rebound in the game. He also got a key. He cut to the basket. They got the rebound. He knocks it off John Petty's leg, gives us an extra possession. So he's hunting right now. And so, but we also told him, like, hey, listen, if you guys cut, as you can see, we got 4 guys close to the paint, like, foul, and so, but if we make it, we got to get back. And they kind of know that. Those are the situations that those guys kind of know. So it was mainly offense, but at the same token, it's like, hey, listen, the things that we really discussed were one timeout. If you don't have anything, we still got a timeout. Don't force up anything, and be aggressive. And if you miss, foul.
So now going back the other way, 7.5 seconds, you're up 1.
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping to happen, and how do you feel about how you played it, and what could be better, all that kind of stuff?
I think Devin does a pretty good job of, I think he does a good job of making him come to the ball.
Right.
Instead of catching it on the run. I think he goes up a little too far. And he, the track guy, so he's a sprinter. And so he thinks that he has enough time. And so he gets kind of hit by a screen a little bit. And then he kind of gets out of control. Again, I think that this is, a situation where we have to communicate this better.
Right.
Devin's issue is he wants to give it everything he's got. The problem is that I think he's doing a little too much, and he just needs to realize that you have help. You have Ryan Bentley there. Now, is Ryan Bentley going to stop Kyra Lewis going downhill? I don't know.
I can't believe how much ground he covers, right? Like, free throw line to free throw line is 5.8 to 3.4. And, like, I mean, that's unreal. On the dribble, just going, being guarded.
There's a reason why he's elite. There's a reason why he is a lottery pick. He deserved that. And for him to be so young, like, at the time, I want to say he was like, he just turned 18.
Right.
18-year-old sophomore. And so, prior to that, I know that, he was in the transfer portal considering transfer because he was one of Avery Johnson's recruits. And the Dukes and Michigans and the Memphises and all those teams were literally calling. So it's like he's a high level guy, and no shortage when it comes to the athletic side. So for him to get there, we're like, hey, listen, like keep him in front. If he's going downhill, force him into a jump shot, especially if it's a pull up two, we'll take it. Unfortunately, Devin tries to do too much and gets a little tangled up, and we go down and they get a foul, rightfully so. He fouled them, no doubt about it. But I think Ryan was in a great spot to help.
Last question, just bringing it home, and I didn't put the clips in, but I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, Kyra goes to the line, he misses both free throws. Penn comes out with the win. That being said, though, on that last free throw, he's missed the first one. Best he can do is tie at that point. Have you guys worked on any end of game this early in the season in terms of what your rebounding principles off of a free throw are, and how important it is obviously to secure that rebound? Have you done anything in terms of like practicing that at this point? And if you're willing to share, what sort of teaching points do you put in to be able to come away with that rebound, which you ultimately do secure and win? But like I've seen numerous games where the worst possible thing happens, they get that offensive rebound on the free throw, hit a quick shot, and the game turns around ultimately in the other direction.
Yeah, so we scrimmage prior to that fairly often. One thing that we do is we play a lot of scenario games, so where we emphasize certain things. So for example, we'll do a coaching game where it's like if we want to emphasize offensive rebounding, we'll say, all right, you get 2 points for a layup, 3 points for a three. If you get an offensive rebound, that's an extra point, or something like that. So it gives the other team emphasis to really crash the glass, and it really teaches us how to really check and go get the rebound. And then in those instances too, we will do scenarios and 4-minute games, 3-minute games, a lot of things like that, to where 1-and-1 the whole way. How to block out, where we crashing from, or what responsibilities do we have, where are we standing, what type of placement do we have, all those different things. And in those instances, while we're in game mode, we're able to teach those things instead of making it like, okay, it's a drill, a blockout drill, or we're staying on the free throw line, everybody takes a turn type of deal. It's in a game like atmosphere, so we're going over it while playing games, or while having or we're in a practical sense. And so we go over that fairly often. It's not anything that we're just like, all right, we're going to dedicate 10 minutes to this, but it's just like in the flow of the game, it's a teachable moment that we're able to kind of let everybody know how things go.
Trey, sorry, there was one question in the chat that I missed because I was in the screen share. James was asking, on that play, do you want the switch and the on-ball defender sprinting to the corner, or do you want the scramble situation? James, you want to unmute and let me know which clip it was going back, please?
It's the end of game.
That
one. Yeah, it's that one.
Right. So.
No, next play.
Oh, the last
play. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would have loved for Devin to switch off. They did a good job of like kind of screening both. So what they thought was, if Kyra Lewis comes off this screen, AJ is going to help, which was damn right what he was going to do. Right. But they screened AJ. So who's the next in line? Ryan Bentley. He's got to help. That's got to be a white. We have to be able to, like, I know Ryan is probably not the most athletic defender, but at the same token, we have to trust in who we have. And so that has to be a switch. And I think that if Devin does not trip Kyra, even though he is elite, he is taking off 2 steps from the free throw line.
Yeah, that's a hard shot, right? Like he's a great player. He has the ability, but that's a hard shot, like going right to left through the lane, double pump, whatever. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I think if Ryan opens up a little bit and just kind of walls him up and forces him to make that left-handed layup over around 2 hands, I think he throws up a missed bunny, And so I think Ryan fouled him too, to be honest, because he reaches in and he bumps him or whatnot. I think he gets a foul either way. But I think, that has to be a white. And Jordan does the right job.
You're right. Sorry to interrupt there. It looks like both of their feet do end up getting them.
Yeah. And I think both of them fouled him for certain. And so I think Jordan does the right thing by not helping off of Bolden. Like that's Ryan's play through and through. He picked up the ball. He has no other dribble. Like his job is correct. And so his only thing to do from that point would be to throw it out. And Jordan would have to be the guy to close out. So I think that he did a great job right there. Jordan did. But all in all, our two seniors have to do a better job of communicating that. That has to be a dead switch, in my opinion.
So going back to what you said, you wanted it a little bit for personal reasons. So congratulations on getting the game. But I also lost to Coach Nate Oates when I was at York. They came up here and they beat us by like 17. They just hurt us. Like we were actually up at the half and the second half was disgusting. So
yeah,
there are a little bit of personal reasons when I was watching this one. There might have been a cheer or two in there as well for Penn.
Yeah, it was great for me because we got thumped by Alabama. Now, granted, it was Coach Grant who was at Dayton, but still, we got thumped. And ever since then, I was like, man, if I ever go back there. So the entire time, by the way, I was yelling twofold because I was like, y'all are gonna lose twice because y'all are gonna lose to Penn today. And then the very next day was the Alabama LSU game, in which I'm a big LSU football fan. And I got a couple of guys that I know on that roster that I actually coached. And I was like, y'all are going to lose to LSU too. And I was screaming it, which was kind of funny. But and they ended up, they did end up losing to them, which was great also. But all in all, man, it was a great opportunity for us to go out there and just show people that, once again, the Ivy League can compete with everybody, and that we have some really, really, really talented players that are able to compete as well. And so it was just a good moment.
Great coaching, sir. Hats off to you. Some great coaching there as well.
Hey, man, I'll tell you this too, man. I'll be real with you. And I learned this my very first year, and I tell this story to just about everybody. I remember my first year, I think I went 9 out of 10 wins. I think I lost my only loss in scout was to Monmouth. New Mexico, we won. Miami, we won. Like, a lot of these different teams we won. And we lost to Monmouth. So I was heartbroken. And I remember after my first scout, I think it was I forgot who my first scout was, but we won. And I was telling Coach, and Coach was like, man, that doesn't even matter. It's like the team wins. It's like the team wins. Like we all put into this. And so At the end of the day, it just so happened to be my research. It wasn't my execution. Like it was the players. And so, and even though I did research, so did Coach. He got in on his Bill Belichick and put his hoodie on and locked his door and did his film research. Coach Graham did his stuff. Coach Mahalik did his stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? We all put into this. And so even though it's my scout, that only goes so far because at the end of the day, we all put it in, and it takes a lot of talking, a lot of adjustments, a lot of this that I might not be seeing, that they might be seeing. And it could have been one play that they came up with, or one scenario that they came up with, or one adjustment that they came up with that changed the trajectory of that game that I may not have known about, that they could have whispered it to Coach. And
for sure,
at the end of the day, like, it's not all about me. It's the team did it.
Yeah, you want an individual sport, go play golf, because that's not what this is by any means, right?
And I suck at golf. I hit it backwards.
Trey, I'm honestly, I'm super thankful for the time that you've given. I asked you for 60 minutes. You've given me 90. This has been incredible. So, big giant thank you for your time. I'll wind it down. Obviously, if you want to stick around after and shoot the breeze a bit, coaches love to talk, and that's where some of the real conversation happens. But I'll wind it down in a similar fashion as always. First, we got Caleb Kupa on next week, so I think that'll be a big one. Look forward to doing that one. And then, a big thank you to the Rising Coaches Network for connecting me with other coaches who are able to share the game. And then just, I said thank you, but I can't stress this enough. It's been awesome getting to know you over the past, couple weeks, few months, whatever it is at this point. But I really appreciate you, Trey, because you're somebody to me who's open, honest, and is willing to share, and obviously helps everybody get better. And like, I can't tip my hat enough as somebody who got into coaching a little bit later in life. I really value relationships where people like yourself, like LB, like, everybody else who's in this room, so to speak, who are willing to share, willing to get better, and, just genuinely appreciate you. So thank you for this time.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Awesome.